This is the 2 Cents Podcast brought to you by Ask Us Why Christian Apparel. My name is Jeremy and I am your host as always. And in this podcast, I interview people that I believe have the wisdom, experience, or knowledge, or all three of topics that I believe are important and relevant for us to understand and navigate today in this crazy world we live in. If you love this podcast, we hope that you continue to listen along with us as we drop episodes every other Thursday. If you want to get to know our community and be a part of it, you can always jump on our Instagram, which is Ask Us Why with 2 Ys. And you can also check out our shop at Ask Us Why Shop. And you can see all the different apparel options that we sell and our different accessories, our newest drops that we're coming out with, so you can stay up to date with everything that we're doing. We hope you love these episodes. And with that being said, let's jump into this. All right, guys, we're live, back in the studio, once again, in the Lion's Den. That's actually what we call this. I don't know if you guys know that. It's because we have lion paintings that I got from Africa.
Makes sense.
Zambia, Africa, to be specific.
Remember when you hung one up on my side of the bedroom?
Yeah, I did. And I was like, this would look really good if I just snuck over on Grayson's side. we split a very small room.
Yeah.
Remember when you said you were going to decorate it and you never did?
Hey, I made a pallet bed. So
yeah, there you go. One that I stabbed my toe on, and that was not fun. Took my whole toenail off. And you left it in the back of the patio, and I stubbed my toe, and it took my whole toenail off.
I don't remember that.
It was
best roommates ever.
It hurt, man.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I forgive you.
I
forgave you a long time ago.
Okay.
Not like I was holding on to this for a while. I just now needed to bring it up.
I feel good now.
But I love
that.
The only thing that he had in there was those plants, like these guys, the floating plants. That's all he ever got up on the wall. And the rest of his wall was blank. And my whole side was like hanging plants. It had a bookshelf up there. It had paintings. It had little picture cards. Everything was decorated. And it was just like, oh, did your roommate move out? And I'm like, no, he's a minimalist.
That's just how he lives.
He'll live in a van one day. It's a clear sign from this.
Yeah. So funny.
He just likes clean.
He just likes clean. Guys, for those of you who don't know, we actually did a recent, I don't know if it's a recent or after, I don't know which one's going to get posted first, but just did a podcast as well with Nate and Christina Jensen, which was all about relationships, marriage, premarital, counseling / coaching, all the like. Awesome episode. Still stoked about that. I somehow convinced Nate to stay for even longer, which is dope, and got to bring Grayson in. And we are talking about a whole new topic. We are talking about cha-ching, money. We never really talked about money on this platform before, probably because I'm broke and I don't have because I don't have advice. Don't do what I did. I'm just messing. But you guys run what's known as Money Smart Skills. I have to say it slowly because if I say it too fast, I say Money Smart. I say Money Mart Kills or Skills. Money Mart Skills. So I say it wrong. But it's Money Smart Skills. Works, the MSS, all aboard. The MSS, like we talked about, right? Yep. And you guys you've been in the finance game for a while. You guys kind of know what you're talking about. So I'm just going to blast you guys with a ton of questions. And I'm just going to be like, I'm going to play the advocate of someone who has no idea about finances because I think this is something that no one really talks about. Like I still to this day do not think that high school ministry talks about finances at all for their students. Yeah. And one of the biggest things I also see is like on the one side, we say, oh man, I wish my school would have taught me how to like pay my bills and to like handle my finances the right way. They just taught me how to get into college. And if that, you know what the Pythagorean theorem is. Am I using that today? No, I'm not. But am I swimming in debt? Yes, I am. And I'm not a very good swimmer. Yeah. So but I also think that like there needs to be some, I think, we'll talk about it, but the Bible talks pretty frequently about money, almost more than anything else. So like it obviously has a place, and we're really failing into the aspect of really focusing on like the younger generations to help set them up for success for a future. Because I also know that money is kind of one of those things where you're like, whoa, like money is bad. It's from the devil. It's bad. Don't even talk about it. Just live a poor and low life and Jesus will love you and he'll accept you into heaven. You're not allowed to have money. So that's also the other mindset that we see, because there's kind of that
extreme mindset.
Yeah, it's kind of like hidden in there. So I just want to give you guys the floor to introduce yourselves, talk about what you guys do, and then from there, I think we'll jump into some of the questions about like money and just kind of how to handle it, what to do with it. So take it away.
Awesome. Give us a start, Grayson.
Me first. All right, sweet. I'm Grayson. 21 years old. I am Nate's son. I've been friends with Remy for quite a long time. Very supportive of everything he's doing with his company, with his podcast, and just everything about him. He's an amazing friend. So, I for work, I guess I do freelance videography, all sorts of stuff. I guess photography too. Just kind of content creation stuff. Have done that since high school. I graduated December 2018. Yeah, like a semester early. So almost 4 years, I guess, and love it. It's been amazing. And then as far as the money side of things, kind of what we're talking about today, like money smart skills, my dad's been the one that's, it's been his kind of baby, his project he's worked on for a long time, really his whole life, essentially building the skills that we share, like, and kind of teach in the company. And I really just kind of came along to assist in a little bit more of the brand development and creative side of things, attracting, like you're saying, teens, the younger generation, that sort of thing, kind of taking a lot of the content and the things that he has and turning it into a digestible sort of format, and easy to read, easy to watch, attractive visuals, all that sort of stuff. So marketing side of things, all that. So he's the one that's really skilled with money, but obviously he's taught me a lot through my whole life. When we were younger, me and my siblings, I've got 3 sisters. We always did this thing called Money Mondays, and
Money Mondays.
It's where, we were a homeschool family, so we were cheesy like that, Money Mondays. But it was like amazing, and it's really, both my mom and my dad raised us with a lot of, financial skills from like the beginning, with savings and all that, and we'll get into that further, I'm sure, in the podcast. But so I've learned a lot of what he teaches, in the in our workshops and that sort of thing. But so I've gotten to live that and take advantage of a lot of the things that he's taught. So it's really special now to be able to help kind of share that to other people, because sometimes I don't realize how lucky I am that I like had that opportunity and like had that advice from like a young age, and so it's like a huge blessing, and has really set me and my wife now up like for success with our dreams and goals and all those things. So I guess that's kind of what I do, and where my background came from to help with his company and everything. And your turn.
Awesome.
Popcorn.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm Dad, Nate Jensen. Hey, just so you guys know, I feel honored. Like I look up to you guys. I'm inspired by the lives that you guys are living, and the things that you're doing. Remy, you joke about being broke, and your entrepreneurial spirit is inspiring to me, and yours too, Grayson. Like I'm living vicariously through you. My upbringing and past is much different than what both of you guys had. It's just super cool to see you guys truly living in the moment and in your dream and purpose. And that's a lot of what we do with Money Smart Skills. And we can get a little bit more into that. But man, my goal and role with the business is not to tell people how they should live their lives, but to pull the dreams out of them and help them live their dreams, right? I believe all of us have been put on this earth for a purpose, a God-given purpose. And he's given us dreams. And oftentimes we just ignore them. And I feel like it's my responsibility with the information that and the knowledge God's given me to help people live their dreams and to use money as fuel for their dreams instead of an obstacle that gets in the way. Because some of the things that you were talking about earlier, the perspective on money can be so negative, and it doesn't have to be. Money's just a thing, right? It's just a tool. But you can definitely use it for the good. So yeah, we've got 4 kids, and I would say,
Not we, you and my mom.
Christina and I
100%.
have
Just to
4
clarify.
biological children and a bunch of others that we would claim also. But
So awesome.
it is really cool to have been through that whole process of as kids, teaching them about money. If we go all the way back, I started teaching the kids about money early on, and I realized we just did a couple of things. First of all, this is not rocket science. Money does not have to be complicated. It actually is super simple. We overcomplicate money.
Yeah.
What we did back with Money Monday was really simple. We did 2 things. First of all, the kids would gather all the money that they made during that week, whether it was a small allowance that we gave them.
All that small hustling they've been doing on the side.
Or hey,
the
that
lemonade stands.
that is part of it.
Part of it, yeah.
Learning early on how to make money, super important.
Yeah.
Right. But we had everyone just gather their money. We set some aside for church, a tithe, and a little bit aside to save. And then the rest of it, each child had their own individual priorities that they would they'd split up their money. That's what we called it, splitting up their money. And splitting up money is just simply learning how to budget, right? How to plan your money. But it's way beyond that. It's not just a spending plan. It's what are your dreams and goals and what do you want to do with it? So each of them had their own customized money plan. So all the way back to that, it taught the kids that a dollar made isn't a dollar to be spent, but a dollar to be used wisely, right? So instead of burning a hole in their pocket, they immediately knew when they made $10 what that money was going to do.
Yeah.
And it was going to be for the good and a God-given goal or dream or priority. And we can, again, talk a little bit more about that. But,
Yeah.
that's kind of the history of where it came from.
Yeah.
Money smart skills grew out of what we experienced for the last 20 years as a family. So we designed together courses out of the content that we created during each season of life. So we have 4 kids born in 5 years. So it was always doing it together. So we put together a workshop for kids ages 6 to 12, a teen workshop, and then a young adult also, and adult. And they all came out of the progression of our kids and what they were learning at different stages. So now we have workshops for all stages of life that people can go from not knowing anything about money to, through this workshop now I know about money. And in addition, we call it a workshop because it's not just a course, but it helps people to build their own customized money plan. So they go from, I don't know anything to I do know something, and then I can actually do it. Right. So it's that transformation all the way from, and that can happen in just a couple hours.
Yeah.
So,
Which is crazy to think about. Like in the course of an hour or 2 hours of lessons, your whole life could change with how you choose to handle money.
yeah.
And that's just, I think that's like, even from my personal experience, I didn't grow up learning a lot about finances. But what I do remember learning is like responsibility and how to make money. So that's where like I kind of saw it backwards, where most people, when they grow up, they learn budgeting and they learn how to handle the money that they already make.
That's right.
But then there's the other whole side of like how to make more money. So I remember growing up, my parents wouldn't buy me like anything that I wanted. I was like, I want an iPod Nano. And they were like, cool, go buy one. And I was like, I don't have money.
Yeah.
You pay it. You got the credit card. And they were like, no, work for it. And I was like, fine, challenge accepted. Cash me outside. So I wrote up like these little flyers, and I looked up like, it's so funny. I lived in the average suburban neighborhood of Oregon, and I looked up like a mansion picture that had beautiful landscape, and I put it on a Word document, and I wrote out a thing that was like, hey, what's up? My name is Jeremy, and I want to buy an iPod Nano, which cost me $150. If you guys want to support me in my mission to buy this iPod Nano by the end of the summer, here's a list of skills that I can use that could help further your household's landscape, whatever it was. So I used to do like mowing lawns, scooping poop, like all those things, like lawns, like picking up weeds, pulling weeds, car washes, all those things. And
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
I like learned early on that if I put my skills to the test, I could learn those things. Sorry, I don't know why. I had needed to clear my throat. That I could learn how to use the skills to my advantage to like make money with it. And so once I learned things later on, like photography and different skill sets within that, you're like, wow, you can make money with these things using the same kind of principles of marketing. Just reaching out to people, telling people the skills that you have and offering your service to them.
Yeah.
That's the basic fundamentals.
It's
but like,
simple.
I didn't grow up knowing like, hey, you should probably be saving a percentage of this. I actually didn't even learn about tithing really until like way later on into like high school. So we'll definitely talk about those things. But overall, I didn't realize that the Bible had so much to say about money. I thought that money from growing up from young was just that money was the root of all evil. So I was like, obviously I need to stay away from it. And the thought of like wanting to make a lot of money is wrong. And so, you know, the most that I could get to is I wanted to buy an iPod Nano for $150.
Yeah.
And that was like the peak. If I wanted to buy anything more than that, that's ridiculous. Why would you spend money on that? Like that's a waste, whatever. But my first question is just like, what does the Bible have to say about money? Like, is it actually like a big deal in it? Is it really like the root of all evil? Is that how like we should see it? What's God's perspective? I guess the question is, what's God's perspective on money?
Yeah, I think, and that's a great question. It's the right place to start. And I like to say most of us need to make a dynamic shift when we think about money mentally. The word that many pastors will use is stewardship, and it's the word that like freaks people out because stewardship sounds like they're trying to just like squeeze money out of people so they go to the church or whatever. So let me just say it a different way. God, the Bible makes it very clear that God is the owner, right? He created the earth, and everything in it is his. Right. So at the very basics, I think we can all understand that. It's when you get to the details that's a little bit harder.
Right.
God truly owns everything. That means that Grayson and Remy and Nate don't own anything.
Yeah.
Right. So we're in an ownership society, right? In America and in many other places in the world. That means we're encouraged to own stuff and we want to own stuff. We want to buy things and it's ours. Right. Like we own a bunch of stuff. Did you know that you can own something legally that you don't own spiritually? That's what the Bible says, right? So if we can make that dynamic shift from ours or mine to his, gives us a totally different perspective of money and finances.
Right.
Now all of a sudden, we're simply managing it for him, right? So when I think about the stuff that's mine, I think about the fun stuff like my house and my cars and my golf clubs and my garage gym and my computer and my phone, like that sort of thing.
Right.
But when I shift it, the pronoun changes, right? It's God's home and all my vehicles are God's.
Yeah.
And my golf clubs and my garage gym, all of that stuff is his. So now I'm making decisions about these items for him, as well as the bank account. I mean, all the money in there, any investments you have, all the things that you take credit for, or that we tend to take credit for, can't do it.
Yeah.
God gave us the skills and abilities to invest, to work hard to make an income. Even that paycheck, it's not really yours, right? It's all God's. So to answer your question,
backwards to society today. Like,
absolutely,
it's just like
Complete
I worked
complete
hard for
opposite.
this. Like this is my money. Especially in the entrepreneur world. It's like I built this business from the ground up. This was my thing that I started. This is my idea. I get to reap what I sow. Give me all the money for it and that kind of thing. So it's just so weird to like, for the world to hear something like that. They're like, that doesn't make sense to me because I've been told my whole life that I deserve what I get because I worked hard for those things and it's mine.
Agree with you. It's a principle that's godly that gets twisted a little bit, right? So God honors and expects hard work, right? He demands excellence in all that we do.
Right.
So all of that is super important, but it doesn't mean just because we work hard and we work to excellence or excellently that it's ours, right?
Right.
He gave us the skills and ability to work hard and to be excellent. He demands us to do that. But the perspective of ownership still has to be his, and then it changes all of our decisions from there. You touched on super important topic, which is work and earning income.
Yeah.
I think from a financial expert perspective, a lot of financial experts don't go there very well.
Right.
They do a really good job of a lot of things within money and finances, but at Money Smart Skills, one of the very first things we talk about is earning aggressively. There's 4 money smart skills, and that's the first one that we use. Because if you don't have any money, you can't manage any money. Right. So earning aggressively. So what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like it gives you a different perspective. The idea is multiple sources of income that diversify your sources of income, so that if one source of income gets dried up or slows down or you can't work, you still have others, right? Most people are married to their job, and that is their primary source of income. So the standard way to go about living your life is go to college or go to community college or a trade school after college or after high school, get some form of education, move into a job that you work at for 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week. That's going to define like your income range, right? You work at that job, maybe you get a promotion, but you're really locked into like an income range at that point.
Yeah.
Right. So we talk a lot about, and Grayson's really good at this. He's always been good at creating multiple sources of income.
Yeah.
But we talk about getting outside of that little box of just your job and making additional income. That's earning aggressively. Nobody has to be limited. In fact, we like to say there's a limited amount of money to be spent, but an unlimited amount of money to be earned. Nobody can tell you to stop.
Yeah.
You can make as much as you want.
Totally.
Right.
Super fascinating. So, I was looking it up because I know scripture talks about it a lot, but this might surprise majority of people, but it says that scripture mentions money over 800 times in all of the Bible, which runs second, I believe, to the kingdom of God. I think kingdom of God is number 1, but like, that's crazy because we think that maybe God's like, hey, this is this evil thing that, man created, put in the world to like organize government and structure and society. But like, I want nothing to do with that. But clearly he has things to say about it. And I think that that's where we get things confused, is that when, God talks about, I believe it's Jesus that explains that, you cannot serve 2 masters. You either serve God or you serve money, and you don't get to choose both. So either one has the throne to your heart or the other does. And so I think that we think that the word is money is the root of all evil, but it's really the love of money is the root of all evil. And so I think that's where I think a lot of us really, that's where the misconceptions start, but then it gives birth to a whole like snowball effect of how we choose to spend our money. And so it gives us a wrong perspective of, I shouldn't go make more money because that's wrong. Like I should be preaching the gospel, I think, but I already don't even really do that anyways. But like, I shouldn't be making more money, or like, is it wrong for me to want like a bigger house or whatever it is? And so I guess a good question for us to kind of start off is like, I think there's a good split in our demographic of high school students and college students. Now, I know that you guys go all the way down to like how you can help, younger kids in that all the way up into middle school, how to handle finances. So I think there's a lot there, but I don't think that those people are listening to the podcast. But I think that there's high schoolers listening that are probably in a place right now where they're like, I go to work because my parents either told me to, or I knew I needed to at least get a job to make some money. But now that I'm making money, like I seem to somehow at the end of the week end up with $0 in my bank account. I don't know how, but I guess I just keep spending the money. So like, what are some of your guys' practical tips when it comes to like just the fundamentals of handling money? And this could be obviously universal to like all ages. It's not just high school students, but like, where's a good place for, I think, high school students to start with how they handle their finances?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess the first thing that I would say is be aware. Like, I don't know what most people's process is, but I'm assuming, if you work at Chick-fil-A, whatever, you've got direct deposit set up to a checking account that either, like I'm assuming you have access to, maybe a parent runs it if you're, younger teenage years, but either way, you should have some sort of access to it. And I think the first thing people do is if you're in your teenage years and you don't understand really anything about money, you don't really understand like the value that it holds or like the true like power that it has,
Yeah.
And so especially if it's everything's debit card, credit card, like it just feels like numbers on a screen, That's why like we started with cash, like when we were younger, we had folders, split up our money into cash. So I think that's actually a great way to start would be, once it gets deposited, if you have access to it or parent, whoever, get that money drawn out into cash, like all of it or a portion of it, like, excuse me, like half of it, whatever, just to start. Cause that way you can really visualize like how much money you actually have, say you work at, I guess, Chick-fil-A, I'll keep using that as an example. Maybe you get every 2 weeks a $600 paycheck, $600 is a lot of money, but also you can spend money quick, know? So taking that out into, 10s, 20s, like all that stuff, just so you have like I was saying, a representation of what $600 actually looks like. I think it'll change your whole perspective of like, every time you spend $20, it's like, okay, well now I have $580 and then now and you can see it going down, so it'll instantly kind of, not that spending is bad, I'm not like trying to say that. I think it'll just allow you to see how much you're actually spending, how much you're actually using. And if you don't want to do the cash thing, you don't have to. I would say then you either need to get some sort of like budgeting app or I mean, you can do it just in your notes and checking your app. Every bank nowadays has an app where you can check your accounts and just watch and see like where your money's going, keep track of it. Like don't change, or I guess you could start here. Don't change anything for a month. You get your paycheck and just write down everything that you're like spending money on, like if it's food or clothes and how much, and just see like, after a month, or I mean, you could probably even just do a week depending on how much you're actually going out and doing stuff. And instantly you'll just see like, okay, well, I didn't really realize it, but going out to Chipotle 5 times a week is $70 or $80. And, but when you're doing it once a day, it feels like, oh, it's just $8. Oh, it's just $9. But like $9 over a week adds up like that, So almost $100 in like a week. So yeah, I think that's just a great way to start, is it either cash or just really active on checking your accounts, tracking how much you're actually spending, what you're spending it on. And all that will dramatically increase like your ability to understand like the power of money and how quickly it can
dwindle.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's my perspective, I guess.
That's really good. Yeah. I love that. The take on value and what money is actually worth.
Yeah.
The teen years that's a really good time to be learning about money.
Right.
Because it is the time when most kids start to work. They start ramping up how much money they're making. They're going from $7 at the lemonade stand to $600 every 2 weeks at Chipotle.
Here, turn the microphone just a little bit more to you. There we go.
You got it. So when you make a good amount of money and you're not responsible for many expenses, which is the teen years for most people, you're living at home with a parent, with mom and dad.
Take me back to those days.
Yeah, right. It feels really good. Most of the money you make is yours to spend or save or give, right? But if you don't know how to manage money, that's what we're talking about, right? How to learn. You mentioned earlier, it's nobody's fault, but schools don't teach you much about money.
Yeah.
It's just it's not what they're great at.
Right.
It's not required. Like Grayson and I like to say that a basic understanding of how money works isn't required for a high school diploma or a college degree.
Right.
Yeah. It's not required. So you're on your own to figure it out, right? To double down on that, most parents, roughly 4 out of 5, aren't comfortable either teaching their kids how money works.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're stuck with what do I do, right? And I'm not trying to paint a dismal picture, but that's just the reality that we live in, right?
Totally.
And that's why we do what we're doing, is standing in the gap and creating a resource that people can use so that they can learn quickly. But when you learn as a teenager, hey, even if it's just like the 4 things, like the 4 money smart skills, we call them, you're earning, and then give, save, and create a plan for the rest. Right? So the plan starts with, we always start with a dreaming session, which is dreams and goals and priorities. Like what do you want? Who do you want to be? What do you want to have? Where do you want to go? Like as a teenager, perfect time to be dreaming about the purpose in your life, and what you want to do today. Short-term goals, medium-term goals, long-term type stuff. But keeping it relatively simple. So then, like once you know what you dream about, we like to say when you turn a dream into goal, you just simply give it a date, right? To turn a dream into goal, give it a date, a target. And once you have your goals, when you put them in order of importance, you're creating a priority list for yourself. So that's what we did with the kids, is they had a priority list. Yeah. So there's 3 or 4 things in their priority list. So you set some money aside for church, you save a little bit, and the rest goes towards the stuff that you've thought ahead of time.
Yeah.
That you know is important to you. So like our number one principle of money is always redirect money you're already making to what matters most to you.
Yeah.
And as in the teen years, you can do that with almost all of your paycheck.
Right.
Right.
One of the things that you started with though is you started with give before even save. And I think that that's backwards for like everybody else in the world. Like we think that give is like, well, I'll see what I have left over. And then from there I will give. I even remember growing up, I went and got coffee with a friend one time, and I told him, I was like, dude, I cannot wait till I make so much money one day, because I can't wait to be so generous and give so much money to like other people and like pay for someone's coffee in front of me and like do all these things. And he was like, dude, yeah, like totally. But I also heard one time from a friend that if you're not generous with what you have now, you're not going to be generous with what you have later. And I was like, crap. I was like,
Shoot.
yeah, that hit me really hard. And I was like, that's true. And so it really changed my perspective to being like, maybe giving needs to have a higher priority in my life than sitting at the back of like, I'll do it one day when I have more money. But God's like, I've given you the talents now. So to say, of the parable of the talents, like I've given you this portion, and do what you can with this portion to honor me. And that'll reflect how I choose to give you money in the future. So if you're not going to be generous now, if I can't have that trust now, how am I supposed to trust you later to give if you can't even do it with the little you have? And that's why Jesus celebrates and promotes the woman who only had a few shekels to give, while the Pharisees were dumping in cash, and they're like, yeah, my tax returns, like take all my money, I got tons of extra. And she's like, I have nothing else, and I'm giving you the last of what I have because I trust you with my finances. And it's like Jesus celebrates, and he really desires for us to trust him first and to see that as like a reason to give, or for that. So that's my next question for you guys is like, why does giving come before saving? Because usually when you listen to most financial advisors, I think majority of them, outside of like if you go to like a church or you're like Dave Ramsey, most of them are not going to be like biblically based. Some of them will, but I think the majority are going to find out there aren't. And so usually the first thing they're going to tell you to do is how to save properly. So I would love for you guys to give a case on why giving needs to be the first. Yeah,
maybe I'll start.
Yeah.
I would just say, as a believer, it starts with obedience. It is a biblical principle. Jesus doesn't talk about how much to give. He doesn't say there's a number like, man, when you get wealthy or rich or someday you make all this money, you can give this big lump sum, like you're talking about the Pharisees giving huge amounts of money. He just simply talks about a percentage. He says the tithe, which means a tenth, right? And some people take that literally. Some talk about it figuratively. I won't get into that debate at all, but it is a percentage, right? And a percentage of your income that's really committed to the principle of stewardship. If we are saying that God owns it all, we need to obey his commands and his principles.
Yeah.
And that would just be simply starting from, the Bible talks about the first fruits. The first fruits is simply right away, not like giving at the end, but giving the first.
Right.
And the best.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why that's the direct answer to your question
No, I love
is the first and the best is God's.
Yeah.
Like that is his. We need to return that to him. We call it giving. I know it's just a nuance, but it would be more accurate to say returning.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a neighbor borrows you a couple of tools and then you wrap it up for Christmas and you give it to him as a gift and he unwraps them and he's like, bro, this isn't a gift. This was mine to begin with.
One year, my brother took my dad's wallet and he wrapped my dad's wallet up and gave it to him for Christmas.
Yeah.
It was pretty awesome.
I think that's amazing. I think that's what God is saying when we talk about giving him money.
Yep.
He's just saying, thank you for returning that. I will bless the rest.
Which I think is all you need as an answer. I think that like if you try to overcomplicate it and try to present too much of a case for why you should give, like, well, studies show that a generous giver actually is 20% happier in life. Like, God calls us to give. Yeah. So like that's more than enough an answer for it. So I love this. Like I love just getting straight to the point and not having to give a list of answers. It's like the reason why we should give is because we're called to give. Amen. But I want to add to that, or at least ask to that. So tithe, from what we understand, obviously comes from the 10% and giving the first fruits, and the first fruits of the livestock, which was money, or it was money for them back in the day. Mm-hmm. So nowadays we see tithe as going directly to church, along with the 10%. And so what do you guys recommend that the church just be like the default give to there? Or is it like find a organization you love or a nonprofit or something else that you see as building the kingdom for God and give to that? Like, what do you guys recommend when it comes to giving / returning what God's given you?
Yeah. So I'll start that conversation with, I'm not a theologian and I haven't studied the Greek ever. Or I haven't gone into all that. I do read the Bible literally and allow the Holy Spirit to move in my life. Mm-hmm. And I might answer this in a way that I would want everyone listening to this to listen to what the Holy Spirit is speaking to them. Yeah. It is true that God wants us to invest his money in what he cares about the most. Right. Mm-hmm. And what does he care about the most? You just mentioned what the Bible talks about the most is the kingdom of God. Obviously, his kingdom matters more than anything to him. Yeah. So how that money gets there, like through what organization, I'm not going to fight about that. Yeah. The Bible talks about the storehouse, and there is a correlation between bringing your tithes to the storehouse and the local church. I think you can make an argument for that. But I also don't in any way want to create some sort of legalism around giving. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably all that I would say on that. I would want for people to give to kingdom work through the Holy Spirit's prompting, whatever that looks like for them.
It's really got to come from the heart. I feel like what your heart believes is true, because that's the whole like essence of giving and returning, but giving I feel like it's really just got to be truly from your heart. And I mean, if you're giving and you're like truly giving with the intent that God with the intent that God has for us, I think you'll probably know, if I'm giving to some random, company or organization, like that's cool. But I think the biggest impact can come when you want to build the community around you and the kingdom around you. Probably first, I don't want to be specific or say anything, but I am a part of, a church here in Phoenix, but also I listen to a lot of online churches and stuff when I can. So sometimes if I feel called, or if I feel like something, I learned something amazing, or I just felt like the Holy Spirit moving me through a sermon that I heard online or certain things like that, I'll feel called to split my tithe, sometimes. So I'll give it, 50% of it here, 50% of it here, just split it like that way. Mm-hmm. I've been called before to want to give to missionaries. We know multiple missionaries overseas, some in Croatia and stuff. So I've done that in the past too, because I believe in what they're doing and know them personally even too. That makes a big difference if you know like the person personally. So I think, yeah, you really just got to follow your heart with that one. And well, really just the Holy Spirit, what he's kind of calling you to. But yeah, I think really focusing on building the kingdom around you and the things that you're really involved with seems like what God would want.
Yeah.
So,
So 100%, I agree. I think that you brought it up a little bit, but this idea of like the legalistic, I have to be giving to my church. And what that causes a lot of the time is a distaste towards giving, because you're like, now I feel like the church is robbing me of it, or whatever you can justify or try to justify in your head about it. But I think that ultimately when you read into the scriptures, what God cares more about anything is your heart. And he cares about like the generosity behind it and giving. I can't imagine that God's going to see that you gave 5% of your 10% to a missionary and he's going to look down on you like, you're supposed to be giving that to the church, man. Because when we think about that, we also have to remember that the church isn't just one building. The church is the conglomerate of everybody as believers. And it is where like when we gather as a community, like that's church. And so like my friends that do mission work in Zambia, Africa, they are also a church as well. And so I think that like what God cares more about is like your heart posture towards money and that recognizing that like it's his and you're like, God, you're calling me to give towards this, or I feel led to give towards this thing. Like I'm going to do that for you. And I can't imagine he's going to go back to that whole like, well, Bible, if you really studied the Septuagint and you brought it down to the rabbinic commentary, it really does talk about how it's supposed to go to the church. So God's just looking down on you with disappointment. Like he's
a gracious God. He's a very forgiving God.
Sure.
He is. And you could come to Revelation later learning that maybe you felt that you needed to give elsewhere and stuff. But like, again, we have a gracious God.
Yeah.
And I think that if you feel called to give in different areas, like he's going to honor that. And that's a huge portion of it.
Totally agree. And the counterpoint to that, I think we have to have some balance. We would all agree with the statement that, or the statements we're just making.
Yeah.
But when we attend and are a part of a local church and we're ministered to by the local church.
Yeah.
If everyone, like if we took our conversation to its logical conclusion and everyone at the church, nobody gave to the church, what would happen to the church?
Yeah.
Right? God doesn't want that either.
They'd be doing a lot of fundraising.
Yeah, for sure. And begging.
Right.
And we don't want that.
Yeah.
I believe there is responsibility for us to support the local church that ministers directly to us and to our families.
Yeah.
So just a little bit of balance.
No, I love that.
God is not the policeman in the sky. I don't believe. Again, I'm not a theologian, but I think a balance. None of us want to completely withdraw our tithe from the church. That's not what
it doesn't. It doesn't dismiss the responsibility we all play into the church. And I 100% agree with that. And so it doesn't excuse someone to be like, well, you know, I watch on and like that. I do agree to some extent with the idea of like online churches and supporting those other churches. But I also know some people will justify not giving to their local church because they're being fed by a pastor who just speaks a little bit better into their life. And it's like, but you're committed also to a local church. And so to rob your local church of like your commitment to them too, it's like we can't allow that to justify why we wouldn't give to our local church to support them as well.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot, but again, it all comes back down to the idea of giving, and that giving matters the most. But I will say one thing that I learned in my studies with money is that in all of Scripture, like we know that we are not to test God, right? So we have the story of Jesus being tempted in the desert, and Satan brings him the bread and he says, he brings him the rock and he says, you could turn this into bread, feed yourself. And he's like, no, do not put the Lord to your test. I think he actually says that with jumping off of the building and the angels will carry him or catch him. And so point is that like, we're not to test God, but I do find it interesting that the only time in all of Scripture that it says that you are allowed to test God is when it comes to money. And it's from Malachi 3, chapter 3. And it starts, I believe, in verse 9. It's a little structured weird. I think it's 8. It says, will a man rob God, yet you rob me? But you ask, how do we rob you? In tithes and offerings. You are under a curse, the whole nation of you, because you are robbing me. And then verse 10 says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that you will not have enough room for it. So when God like says something like that, you're like, whoa. And that also is like, you got to be hesitant because it's like, what's your heart behind why you're giving now? Are you doing it because you want a bigger return on your investment because you want to be richer? Or are you doing it because you need to show God that you trust him? But God's trying to make a point. He's like, I am in control. Like I got this. Like I can take care of you. But like you have to be able to like give me that portion of your heart. Because if we only give him 90%, but God's asking for 100%, he can't use 100% of us. And I think that 90% is huge, but that 10% is crucial. And not to say that it's 10% because of the tithe, but more just the analogy of like you're holding something back from God. So I've always found that fascinating. I love that. So giving, we've got that. I think we've got a pretty solid like case for why we should. Following that, saving. How the heck do you save money? I heard about this thing called like a Roth IRA. Am I supposed to go invest into like Dogecoin? I'm hearing tons of advice about different cryptocurrencies and different things. Like, should I be going into real estate? I don't know. I'm just getting a lot of advice from a lot of places telling me where to save my money. And people are saying, don't even save your money in bank accounts anymore. But I don't know. So like, how should I save my money?
Well, let's bring this back just a little bit.
Okay.
As soon as we start talking about saving, it's common for people to immediately jump to investing, right? And that's where we started going here.
Yeah.
Saving is much different than investing. They're two totally separate things.
Make sure to get a little bit closer to the mic.
Saving is much different than investing, right? They're two totally different things.
Yeah.
Saving simply says that some of the money God's blessed me with is not for right now. It's for the future, right? So when you think about just your responsibilities and how bills come due and when they come due, if you spent all of your money every time you got it, it wouldn't work.
Right.
Right. So I just call saving setting some money aside for the future. And depending on how much you own will determine how much you should be setting aside, because there's a lot of responsibilities that come with owning, right? So if you got a big house and you got a bunch of stuff, right? We're starting to talk about like emergency funds, setting money aside that.
You lose the audio for a second.
I did. Talks about setting money aside for the future.
Yeah.
Right. So how big of an emergency account should you have? And specifically, what am I saving for? I think that's the beginning part of saving, is not just growing your money, but setting money aside for the future. And I like to say that financial planning of any kind is simply setting money aside for the future.
Yeah.
Right. Whether you're earning an income on it or a return on it or not. So that, to me, that's the starting point.
Yeah.
And saving is setting money aside for like the next 2 or 3 years, like stuff that might be coming up. Like if you're going to buy a car and you're setting money aside for it, you're not going to invest that money.
Right.
But you might be setting aside $300 or $400 a month so that you can purchase or upgrade your vehicle in the next couple of years. That's saving, right?
Yeah.
And it's having an understanding of your financial situation and knowing that you're going to have a pretty big expenditure at a certain point and getting ahead of it instead of forcing yourself to use credit when you get there.
So how much, like what is like a good ballpark percentage that people should usually be saving? Because obviously like circumstances are different for different people, but is there like a general number that people can take away with of like what they should be saving?
It's different at every age and your level of responsibility. But if you're just talking about saving, like an emergency fund type saving, I would get to a certain limit and then stop and then start saving for future things or items or timeframes. Like your emergency fund might need to be some financial experts say 3 to 6 months of your expenses would be wise to have for savings. So once you get there, then you stop that.
Yeah.
And you start thinking about when do I need to replace the tires on the car? Like simple stuff. Like that's truly saving for future spending.
Right.
Right. Without that, it becomes a bill when you need to use the credit card for it. So percentage wise, I would say 10% is a starting point no matter what age you are.
Right.
10% of your income, and at different levels of income and different times of your life, it could be as high as 30%. And for those who don't really have a lot of expenses, it could be much higher depending on their priorities and what they're trying to save for.
Totally. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Grayson?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's it's hard to nail down an exact percentage because, like you said, it depends on your responsibilities and things like that. But I think either way, no matter where you're at financially, no matter how much extra whatever you have, you should at least start with like, I mean, it could even be 1% if you really are in a tight spot right now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But just getting in a habit of it is what helps. And like,
That's good.
actually, even just I think it's been this last like year, my wife and I started to do like automatic saving, and that like changed the whole game, because like you can have intentions of like saving and all that, but like if it automatically pulls out of your checking into your savings, I mean, it's not going to like overdraft your account or anything like you don't have to worry about that. But we've been able to save like a ton with that. So I think like he said, savings is a lot more for future things that come up that what would be on credit, or I mean, maybe you have a lot of money in your checking account, that's cool. But I've got like, for example, I've got different funds. Like I'm self-employed, so my first year I got like hit with a massive tax bill, and it like wiped out like a lot of my money because I was just a single like 19-year-old kid, and didn't, I don't know, a big tax bill, so I learned quickly, all right, I'm going to start a savings really like only for taxes. And so I put, I usually don't do a percentage. I usually just choose like an amount that I want to save from each check and that sort of thing. So from each check, I'll put, whatever my amount is in there. And I've done that the last, I think like 2 years, and the account's grown to like a decent size now where like I feel a lot more secure going into, I mean, even right now it's tax season, I've got to do my taxes from 2021. I feel so prepared because I'm like, all right, if I get hit with a tax bill, it doesn't matter because it's not going to eat into my regular savings. It's not going to eat into my checking, like my other income. It's not going to eat into credit card bills. It's not going to do any of that because it's just, and this isn't to brag either. I'm just using like an example of, because I had to learn the hard way of, now having different savings account for different reasons. So I think like an emergency fund, depending on your responsibilities, is a great idea. Tax, if you're self-employed, that's a great idea. If you're savings for something specific too, like even younger guys, like if you want to get married at a certain age, start a savings account for
a ring.
Like that can be a huge expense depending on how particular your future fiance is, you can spend thousands on a ring, obviously. So agree with what he said. Kind of choose a number that you want to get to and kind of focus on each thing at a time, or give a smaller portion to each thing and like slowly build them up. But it takes time, right? So that's the reason why you have to be consistent. And I think the best way to do it is just starting with, depending on how much you make, choose like an amount, or like he said, 10%, and just start with that. And then, once you get in the habit of it, you can choose and work out money where, work out your percentages based on your needs. So, I don't know, I guess that's what I would say. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it really does. It differs because if you're in the game of being self-employed and you make money on the side, everything's going to be a 1099, which for those of you who've never heard of that before, it's basically just how you get paid. It's the tax form you fill out, but you don't get your taxes taken out of that usually. And so you have to be manually like taking that money that you're making and setting aside a portion of it because you're going to get taxed for that later when you report that income on your taxes. Hopefully you're reporting it on your taxes. Yeah. But like for the rest of us that are just doing like W-2s, usually your taxes are going to automatically be pulled out from state and from federal. And so more often than not, you don't have to worry about that. And especially students, when it comes to eventually like filing taxes, which is a whole nother topic of discussion. A lot of students do get some kind of return only because there's a lot of incentives with being a student.
Yeah.
I've experienced both sides of the spectrum. Yeah. But even outside of that, if you're just trying to like, even if you don't know like what the next 2 years has for you, like you might not be interested in a car, you might not know if you want to go to college or not. like I think that the principle still stands that you should be saving your money, even if you don't know what you're saving for. Spending that money on something that's going to wither away and collect dust is not worth your time when you can also be saving that money for something in the future, especially if it comes with a safety net. And I know that's hard to convince a high schooler of if they don't have any expenses, where if all of a sudden their money no longer comes, they're like, oh, I have to pay bills. Oh, I got these. You might have a phone bill. You might have a couple of those things, but majority have most things covered for them. But I think that's something super key, is that you're setting yourself up for a habit that's going to set you up for success when you get into college and you get out of college, or even just out of high school, don't have to go to college. Yeah. Those are the principles that you're going to be like, I'm really glad I set myself up for this because I really need this now. But if you just have the habit of like, well, I don't need to save right now because my parents pay for everything, so I'm going to spend it all, then those habits follow you to when you go get your first apartment. And you have to figure out your bills, and the bill comes due, and you can't always just hit up your parents to be like, hey, can you pay my rent for me? Yeah. You have to figure out life. And so then you really have to realize, you're like, wow, I do need to save. I do need to realize and ask myself, is this something that I should be spending my money on, versus do I have enough in my account to spend money on that? And then you're like, I do have enough, I'm gonna buy it. Yeah. Versus the other side of it, where it's like, well, I have expenses coming up. Do I have enough saved aside? Have I already put away that? Yeah. Then deciding from there your expenses. So we'll go into saving almost next, but the next one I want to talk about, which was the difference that you brought up, which is really cool, is investing. Do you think that investing is something that high schoolers and college students should be doing? And if so, what kind of investments should they be making?
First of all, yes, I highly recommend it. And we're talking about a lot of this stuff as though we're speaking like directly to a high school student or high school age or even college age, which is appropriate. I would highly encourage the conversation to occur between the parents and the college student, or the parents and the high school student. If you rewind just a little bit, a high school student may not be motivated to save or really have any idea until they talk to their parents about what makes the most sense in our family. Yeah. If I do want to go to college, am I going to have to pay for it all? And will I have to have $40,000 worth of student loans when I'm done? Yeah. Or would it be smart for me to get started? Because there's really two things that get in the way. It's the car and the education. Those are the two obstacles to starting life well. And I mean, you guys have experienced that, you and your friends and your close network. If you can figure out a vehicle or transportation and how to get through college without being overburdened. My biggest tip for fathers as they're raising teens and young adults when it comes to the financial side is to think about where their child will be 6 months after graduation and use that as a marker, instead of, can we get the loans to get them through this Ivy League school or whatever the school happens to be? No, more like, where will they be 6 months after graduation? And in our family, we wanted to have a car that didn't have a loan, and no student loans if possible, a debt-free degree, and a couple $1,000 in the bank at 6 months after graduation. That then gives you choice, right? Yeah. So I think saving needs a bigger picture than just, I need to just put a bunch of money in the bank, but to have a specific goal like that. And then it's easier to save that money and to direct it because there's a purpose to it. When it comes to investing, absolutely. And anything that you're looking 3 years or further out that you're going to need money for, I'd invest that money. Definitely. I love investing. Investing is stewardship, and it makes sense to invest in things that you know and that you understand well, or that you have someone that knows what they're talking about helping you with.
Which is super wise, because I don't know if you guys ever follow the sports world, but Shaquille O'Neal he's just awesome. He's such a cool guy. But people have asked him about things like cryptocurrency before, and if like he's going to invest into it, and he's like, I don't understand it, so I'm not going to put my money into it. Yeah. And I was like, that's a very wise word for like a quick, short little reel. I was like, that's smart. So I just wanted to affirm that thought. I think that's really cool.
Not bad for a guy that's worth $400 million.
Yeah, right? Literally. Yeah. He spent $75,000 at Walmart one time. It's when he got transferred or traded to the Suns, and he just had moved to Phoenix, and he had nothing with him. So he went to Walmart and bought everything for a house, furniture, like television, clothes, everything. And his credit card company got a notification that someone was trying to spend $75,000 at Walmart. And they called him and he was like, no, it's me. Yeah, you can let it through. The largest purchase to Walmart in history, I think. It's such a fun story.
That's crazy.
I love Shaq.
So good.
Don't fake the funk on a nasty dunk. That was the Reebok theme back in the day.
Classic.
Shaquille O'Neal.
So good.
So I'm not a licensed investor in any way, or I don't advise people on specific types of investments or give stock tips or anything like that. I do just recommend that you work with someone that you know and trust, or a professional that does it for a living. Again, someone that most often I just recommend that people talk to other people in their network and find a good referral for someone that they can work with.
And does that mean like when you say a financial advisor, are you talking like someone that works at like an Edward Jones, or that works at like a nearby like financial firm, or what is that? What do you mean by that?
I do mean that. If you want to invest in the stock market, it's really risky if you know nothing,
right?
Just to try to figure out investing on your own. Mm-hmm. So if you want to invest in the stock market, quote unquote, hire someone that knows what they're doing in the stock market.
Totally.
And you end up paying a little bit to an advisor that helps you make even more.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely an advocate of working with professionals when it comes to that. And I like to say that time is money's best friend. So absolutely get started early.
Yeah.
The earlier you start, the better it is. We could talk numbers all day, but procrastination hurts. Like waiting to invest hurts, but starting early is very bountiful. Mm-hmm. So even just a little bit of investing in your teens will make a tremendous amount of money into your adulthood. So I strongly recommend it. By the way, I'm pro all types of investment. Mm-hmm. Real estate, stock market, cryptocurrency.
You said that one with a little bit of hesitancy.
Just a little bit. But I believe that all potential investments are good opportunities for people.
As long as you know what you're doing getting into it. So
exactly. There are some that come with an inherent higher risk than others. So you just need to be aware of that.
And just as like, I don't even know how we like glazed over this, but you used to work at,
I worked for a financial institution.
Okay. So like you kind of know what you're talking about when you're talking about this stuff.
I've been in the money business for 30 years. Yeah.
Yep. So you got a little bit of experience behind you. Mm-hmm. So even though obviously there's a lot of different ways you can invest, one of the ones that has always stuck out to me from what I've done and researched on is what's called a Roth IRA, which is very similar to a 401k. But a Roth IRA is something that you can start a lot earlier than a 401k, which usually I believe has to be started more often than not with another business. And you have to, I believe, be a certain age, I think 21.
401k is just simply an investment that you would usually get through an employer.
Yeah.
That's why most people don't start them until later in life. But you can do Roth IRAs or traditional IRAs, or even SEP IRAs, which is when you're employed by yourself much earlier. And I don't know the exact ages. It's not something I'm up to speed on, but absolutely. No, we're talking now about retirement investments. Mm-hmm. So I like to recommend both ways for young people. If you only invest in your retirement, you're locking all of your money up until you're 59 and a half. We call them qualified investments because it's retirement money. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't recommend that. I definitely recommend a solid amount of money being invested for your retirement. And that's just going to be your long-term forever investment. When you get to 59 and a half, 60, 61, 62, you're going to be happy you did it. Right. You're going to have plenty of money if you start early. But I also recommend that you take some of your money and put it into a non-qualified investment. You basically you can invest in the exact same things. It's just how the money is categorized. It's not retirement income or retirement investments. It's simply your money that you can have access to at any time.
Right.
So saving money for other things or investing in other things.
Yeah. So I think that one reason why the Roth IRA sticks out is because of its tax exemption when you pull, only if you wait until 59 and a half, I believe is the number. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why I partially brought that up, is because when when we talk about something like compound interest, which can be a big word and it's a lot of math and numbers, but the idea is the earlier you start, the better it is. Yeah. And so that's something even for me is like, I remember reading something that said like, if you started investing, I believe it was $200 a month into a Roth IRA at the age of 24 until I can't remember what the age was, but if you started at 24, by the time you were 59 and a half, you'd have like $1 million or something like that. But if you started at like 18, then that number turns into like 6-7 million. I can't remember exactly, but the general statement of
the principle
compound,
is right.
Right. The compound interest, it dramatically increases once you start getting into those kinds of numbers. So that's where it's like, if you're in a place where you have extra cash sitting around that you don't plan on spending and you want to invest into something for your future, then like that could be something that, you know, is invested into your retirement that is a better route in the scheme of, I don't know if I want to say the word scheme, the grand scheme of everything when it comes to like investing or saving is that like, you're not going to get taxed heavily on that. But if you pull that money before 59 and a half, you're like penalized pretty hard with the taxes on it. But the incentive is that like they want you to be saving for retirement and not trying to live off of just your Social Security. And I think that's where we see a lot of people now. And like, I've seen this just personally in my life where, you know, I've known people that didn't save and they only lived off their Social Security and they were getting like very, very little, but they weren't at a place where they like could physically work the jobs they used to work anymore. And so now they're really in a pickle where they don't have freedom that they thought they were going to have because they either chose to spend all their money when they, you know, had it right away, or they just didn't save and invest wisely. Could be a lot of factors, but I just know that like, even just putting away a little bit of money, which is something that I did, especially like doing it like through a financial advisor. Like my parents have Edward Jones. We have a financial advisor we use, and him personally, like his returns that he does for us annually is like, it's kind of ridiculous. It's a lot higher than what like the average gets. But that's why like you go to a professional and not try to do, because you could technically invest your own money into a Roth IRA and choose where you want those like assets to go. But then you're gambling on trying to figure out, you know, if those are going to do you well. And you're not constantly studying those because you're trying to live your life.
Yeah.
It's not your job unless it is your job, and that's different. But yeah.
I think my way to, kind of simplify this for the people who have gotten lost in the clouds just in the past few minutes, because I know that it's super easy. Like to us, you know, we talk about this stuff all the time, but I know there's definitely a group of people who probably just don't understand this stuff at all.
Get the Money Smart Skills package.
Well, no, I wasn't even going to say that. I mean, you can, but don't like start in investing until you actually understand it, because like it can seem like this thing of like you said, you know, start at 18, you'll have $6 million, you know, but like you can't promise that thing. Every form of investing, like you said, has some sort of risk involved. Like God forbid the entire market crashes when you're 59, and then I don't know, and then 59 and a half comes around 6 months later and you've got like no money in your account. Is that going to happen? I don't know. Like, who knows exactly? But I think like if you don't know anything about it at all, start with saving. A lot of advisors or people, not advisors, but like gurus, you know, people online that you'll see say that saving is dumb. You need to only invest your money. But because of the inherent risk that comes with it, you need to focus on now first, because I mean, it's part of just living like a present life too. I feel like is starting on now in the next like 6 months to a year sort of thing. Even a little bit further, like some of those other accounts, start there. And once you get a really good grasp of that and in a solid routine, then I'd explore into a lot of the investments. So I'm just trying to simplify it a little bit for people who really don't know a lot. And I mean, I also am just speaking from a perspective of still learning a lot about investing, and I haven't gone super deep into it because there also is a certain level of not extra, but somewhat of like extra finances that you need, because it is a little bit more of testing it out and seeing how your money works, and you know, trying some investments and being willing to lose money is like a part of it. Definitely. Like I feel like you would say that for sure. So that's why you can't bank on investments as your like savings account or anything like that.
Right.
That's all I'm trying to get at is, don't like, it can seem overpromise, like people can overpromise for sure. And you can be like, oh, I'm going to make 6 million at 59.5, which is like cool. And you 100% can. But yeah, there's an initial investment that comes with investing as well.
Yeah.
And even like a Roth IRA, I think it's like you need like 3,000 technically or something like that, to even like start investing into something. So it's like, and that can take a long time for certain people. So don't stress if you're not at a place where you're like, I'm 18, I didn't invest. Like, you're
already hosed.
Yeah. Well, I used to be like that. You know, I was like, I didn't get in early enough, or I'm not doing this. And like, all that's going to do is add worry and stress. And bringing it back to the Bible, you know, God says not to worry. A second in your life is not going to add. It's not going to add
a single hour.
Yeah, a single hour to your life, or a single minute, whatever. So, keep it simple and start there. So,
and I would just like, I love that. And I would even add too, on top of that at the same time, that also doesn't give you like a good excuse to never get involved with finances and doing more with it than just throwing it into a bank account because you don't understand it. Because I think that's another one that people like to play the card of, is they're like, I don't really understand it, I'm gonna just stay out of it. And it's like, well, I think that there's there's a lot of wisdom in like how you handle your money and how God desires you to handle it. And it's not saying go throw all your money in Dogecoin, because that's what everyone in the world is saying to do. But like there's a level of responsibility with how we steward the money. And if there's a way that we could build on top of what we already have by being wise with how we choose to invest it, God honors those. And I think that that's a good a reminder for both sides of it, is like, don't rush into it, but also don't do nothing about it either.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And finding that pace, I mean, that's all over the place, but I think a really good place you could start is with money smart skills, because I think you guys probably pace it out pretty well for people. We'll talk more about that at the end too. So the final area, well, I think maybe the final area, I'm trying to remember what your fourth one is that you said, but is it around spending?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's earning aggressively, giving generously, saving consistently, and then spending wisely.
Spending wisely. Let's talk about it. Are credit cards from the devil? Yes or no?
Yes. No, I'm just kidding.
He says yes, I say no. I don't think anything financially, like the whole topic of finances, no matter what financial tool it is, it's all neutral. There's nothing of the devil in any of it. There's also not necessarily anything of God in the tools. Right. We've already recognized that the asset, like God owns everything, but how we manage it, that's super important. Like what we do with it. So money, if you have a stack you got 10 grand sitting on the table, it is not godly or ungodly. It is not right or wrong. It is not good or bad. It is 100% neutral. Yeah. It's what we do with it and the decisions we make and how we manage it that either honors God or doesn't.
So, 100%. Love that. So then kind of going into that, I think that a lot of people, I think that right now the U.S. debt for credit card debt, I think it sits at like something like, it's in the trillions. I know it's really, really high up there. It's ridiculous. So clearly you got someone like Dave Ramsey who's going to tell you to go cut it up, like cut the card up that you got, throw it away, never touch it again, and then work on just paying off those debts as fast as you can and just get cash in hand. So he's someone that's going to advocate. Like if I had Dave Ramsey on the podcast and I asked him if they were from the devil, he'd probably be like, absolutely, those are from the devil. Stupid. Why would you have those? But I also know that like that's one perspective on it. And I think that that's really, really wise. How you word that is that like it's how you choose to use it is what matters the most. So what's a good example of unwise spending if you have a credit card?
Yeah. So I kind of want to take the credit card conversation off the table and just talk about wise spending. Okay. Because it's just a medium. It's just a tool. Yeah. Right. A debit card and a credit card are both cards that allow you to quote unquote spend money. Yeah. Right. They're a way to manage money, pay bills, buy things. One, a debit card is attached to a bank account with cash. One is attached to a bank account which when used could create or does create a bill that you owe, right? Either of them can be managed appropriately. I recommend starting with the debit card so that you understand how to manage money with your own money, right? That is the point. As soon as you, and the reason that we talk about, or that Dave and other financial experts would talk about credit being from the devil, is just because it's risky. When you create debt, it steals from your income. Debt is simply creating a payment, right? When you're using debt, it actually steals from your monthly income because you have to pay that.
Yeah.
Right. So if we're just talking about like your regular weekly and monthly spending, we shouldn't ever have to talk about credit cards because your spending plan, like the goal is that your income is higher than your expenses, right? And there's a difference between the two, and you would never have to use a credit card. There's no credit involved in that. The only time you would ever need to use a credit card in that situation, if you're buying something you don't have money for, and that's where the risk comes in, is that credit is easy. If you're managing your money on a monthly basis and you've got it taken care of, really no huge need for a credit card.
Yeah.
But other people will start using credit cards for the reward points and making a case for it, which I'm comfortable with if you've managed money for a while and you're making good decisions with it, and know that you can just pay it off every month and you're not spending more. You're just transferring money to that to get the points.
Yeah.
Like that can be appropriate. So
yeah.
Hopefully I'm not over talking that or under talking that.
No,
It's all just a tool. I would stay away from cards and credit cards until you are confident in your own money management skills.
Yeah. And I think the reason why I bring it up is because a lot of young people are going to get to a point where they're more often than not in college or outside of the home, and finances are going to start getting a little bit tighter. And they're going to start getting letters in the mail, which I get, I think, at least 3 a day from, Capital One, Bank of America, Chase, not even Chase. I actually have Chase, but like a bunch of like other companies that are like, hey, we have a really solid, rock solid offer for you. We're going to give you $500 cash back if you sign up with us with a credit card today. And so the temptation is coming there to spend it. But I think that like having a mindset on how to address those things or how to like face those temptations or those like decisions, I won't even just say a temptation, because again, it's how you use it is where it either brings glory or doesn't bring glory to God, but like how to kind of navigate that area of things, because debt is huge. It's all over the place, and it doesn't just come in credit cards. It comes all over. If you're going to get a loan on a car, that's also debt. You buy a house, more often than not, you're not paying cash for that house. So that's a debt. So it's a matter of like how you handle that. But I just know that that's something where you think that it's not a big deal. And I know friends that have stories where they're like, oh, like I could go get a credit card and I have a $10,000 spending limit. You're like, sweet, I'm going to go buy a bunch of stuff now and I'll pay it off later. But they don't understand how credit cards work, how interest works on it, and how really it's not someone gives you exactly $10,000. You spend $10,000 and then you pay back just that $10,000 to them. You're paying on top of an interest, which over the span of a really low monthly payment of like $150 for that, they're going to make almost double on top of it. And that's why it's a really, really shady industry, because
it is.
Like it's not biblical. Like you really shouldn't be like charging interest. I don't think I've seen it anywhere. I've seen the counters to it, but I just know that like it can be a really easy, like deep pool to jump into and not realize how deep the water was. And when you're starting to get tired of treading and you start drowning in that debt, you're like, now I don't know how to get out. So, but I do love the mindset that it doesn't matter whether it's a credit card or a debit card, but it's a matter of how you spend your money. So then my follow-up question is what does it look like to spend wisely? Like what are some examples, or how does someone even spend wisely? What does that look like?
You want to start with that, Grayson? Do you want me to?
I was gonna let you start.
You were gonna. Well, let me start with this, and then you can tag on it if you'd like to. But everybody has something that they're spending money on. Right. If we move into the high school, the college, the young adult world, the adult world, we're all spending something. The older you get, or the later in life you get, the more locked in your budget tends to become. And it requires a spending plan. I would call wise spending any scenario where you are giving generously, you're setting some money aside, and your total spending is less than the income that you make, right?
Yeah.
So what you choose to spend your money on within those parameters matters a whole lot less.
Yeah.
Right. But still within those parameters, we like to recommend the whole dreams, goals, and priorities process. And there's going to be some bills and expenses that are just fixed and locked in for everybody. Everybody has to have housing. In most cases, you have some sort of cost for transportation, whether you have a loan on a vehicle or not, you're paying gas and insurance. So food, like the basics of life.
Yeah.
Spending wisely for many might be taking a look at how and why you're spending money. And I like to say redirecting money you're already making to what matters most to you.
Right.
Right. So, man, if you've just gotten in the habit of spending a bunch of money on food and drinks or eating out a lot or whatever, and we just call that quote unquote lazy just because it's convenient.
Right.
But you really need something, or you have a priority that is X, whatever that X is, and you can never get to that. I would just simply say, hey, let's reconfigure how you're spending your money so that you can direct some of your money to what matters most to you. But spending less than you make is wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree 100%. I think, we like to, one of the things we try to focus on a lot is we don't want to tell you what to spend your money on. You get to decide that. You get to decide your priorities. Like if your priority is food and you love eating out, like, okay, that's awesome. You can rack up, you can spend a lot on food if that's really like truly your priority for whatever reason. Then you can prioritize, but you're probably going to have to just watch what you're spending your other money on, like so that you can truly prioritize that. So like, we don't want to tell you what you should and shouldn't spend your money on. I think it just, I think a lot of it just comes back to like, your longer term visions and goals. And don't feel like just because you have money left over, you have to spend it either. And that goes back to like the origins of, when we were younger, like in our priority list is, all right, if you've got 3 things you want to buy or purchase or whatever, like bigger things in the future. I mean, for me, when I was younger, it was Heelys.
Yeah.
So like if I wanted a pair of Heelys or whatever it is, I'm not going to go out and just spend that money aimlessly. Unless that's your priority, but like, I'm going to take what I would have probably just gone and spent or bought some food or gone to a movie or whatever, and just redirect that towards saving. So I think, like similar to what Nate said, is spending wisely is also kind of goes into saving as well. Yeah. So I think they kind of go hand in hand. I don't have a lot more to touch on than what you said, but I think it's just being aware of what you're spending on. Kind of similar to the question you asked, when you're a teen and learning about money and stuff, is just being aware of where it's going, 100%. But I think if you have all the other things, kind of in place before that, you already tithed, you already
saved.
You already saved. Earn aggressively, give, save, and then the ending is kind of spending. You will already probably be set up in a decent spot to make a wise decision off of that. If the other stuff is in place, you really can't make that terrible of a decision, because you should be confident in the other steps you took, to end up there.
100%.
So.
Yeah, so everything you guys have said. So I read a book by a guy named Ramit Sethi that's called "I Will Teach You to Be Rich." ironic when you're a Christian reading a book that says that, but I just said I had heard good things about that. That's like they give good financial advice. And basically what he said is pretty much everything in line except for he's just not a Christian. So the giving part isn't really involved, but he follows the same structure of like, as long as your priorities and like those first things, like those anchor points are hit. So like making sure that you have put money aside, that you already like the first thing that he says is to focus on like that safety net of like making sure that you can provide, especially when you're like not in high school or college and you have responsibilities, like get that safety net up. Actually, even before that is focus on like debt. Like what is your goal? So one of the things he says is like, what's your payoff date? And he says that a lot of people, they don't know. They're like, I don't know, whenever I haven't looked at it. And it's like, okay, well, figure out a day that you want to have it paid off by and make that a goal and get your debt paid off. And then after that, it's like, then you can start focusing on more financial freedom. But right now you have debt and you don't have freedom because they own you and they will take your assets if you don't pay. And so that's kind of like the route he goes, but he says like, make sure that once you've done those things, it's like, what have you saved and put aside for those things? And what have you put into your investment accounts, something like the retirement accounts that he talks about. And then after that, you just have to figure out what your priorities are for what you want to spend. It's like, if you're someone that loves travel, then obviously like put majority of that money that you get, that's like that, he calls it the guilt-free spending money. And it's like, put it to those things that you want. But that means that if you really care about travel, you don't get to care as much about getting the really nice shoes or getting new clothes every single week. Yeah. If you really care about your coffee and you want to have like a Starbucks coffee every single morning, obviously that adds up a lot. But that means that you're going to have to cut back with how often you're buying food out, because you have to just like, you have to manage those numbers. And obviously your input or your output should be less than what your input is. Yep. And so, yeah, I think that's huge. Is there shouldn't have to be like, well, why spending means that you don't buy from this company and you only buy from that company, and you should never spend more than $10 on food if you're going to go out somewhere, and all that kind of stuff. It's like, once you've kind of like nailed those first really key important aspects, then like your desires and what you desire to like buy and those things, like you have more freedom to do those things. Yeah. Like if you want to do those, like you can spend that way. And I think that like the Lord rejoices in that, because you've nailed down the first parts about where is your heart even in this in the first place. Is it first with God and knowing that like everything is his and that he is in control? And then beyond that, are you showing that you can manage wisely with what you have to save? And then beyond that, can you invest? And like going all the way back to like, are you working hard for this money and like continuing to pursue excellence for with all of this? And then after that, it's like, hey, like this is your reward for what you've done and you've honored me in it. And like, if you want to go buy, if you really want to go buy a $250 pair of shoes, like I don't imagine that God's going to look down on you for that, because you've managed what's really important first, and then whatever's left over is what you can kind of spend with. But I think people get those things backwards. They're like, ooh, I really need this new pair of shoes or whatever it is. They go buy that stuff first, and then they're like, I should probably save. And so they save, and they're like, I don't really have a lot left to give. So like I kind of give to the church, but I don't have like a weekly setup like with giving and all those kind of things. And so it's just like God just kind of makes his way, like, or it doesn't make his way, but like we push him to the back of our priority list. Yeah. And so when we flip that, it makes the whole process a lot easier. But
I think what we're saying all together really comes down to two like rules of thumb. Once you've given generously and you've saved consistently, that last piece of spending wisely, if there's two rules of thumb to that, it would be the first one I mentioned earlier, which is when you redirect money that you're already making to what matters most to you. That's like the proactive side of spending. You're intentionally spending on the stuff that matters most to you. Right. The reactive side would be not allowing yourself to spend spontaneously on things that would get in the way of living your dreams and achieving your goals. Yeah. That defensive side of just stop the spontaneity. And totally. That's the side of like the wasting side of money. Yeah. Those two rules of thumb, I think, would go a long way to spending wisely.
I love that. Yeah. I think this podcast has so much. I'm probably going to go back and listen to this a lot. I think there's a lot of good stuff in here. I hope that you guys found this beneficial as well. Not necessarily you guys, but the people listening to this.
Yeah, it's always good reminders for us.
But gosh, if you guys have more questions about this stuff, you can for sure reach out. And I think more than anything, I think that this is a great time to mention Money Smart Skills and how people can get involved if they do want to take their finances to the next level. So how can they get involved with Money Smart Skills? Is there an Instagram, a website? What is the next call to action for anyone who wants to get involved?
Yeah, we are on social, but if you want to learn more about the specific tools that we offer and the resources, moneysmartskills.com is where we house all of our workshops. We do have workshops for 4 separate age groups, like I mentioned earlier, as well as coaching that we call fast start coaching for once a teen or a young adult has worked their way through the workshop. We have 10 separate sessions that are intended to be 10 weeks beyond the workshop, where we're teaching skills and getting habits in place and expanding knowledge beyond just a spending plan into other areas of finances as well. So moneysmartskills.com is a great place to go for that.
Heck yeah. I'll make sure to have the link in the bottom of our episode so they can just click it on there too. But
cool.
Sweet. Well, thank you guys so much for being on this podcast.
Of course.
You guys
Thank
are
you
the
so
best.
much
Thanks,
for having
Remy.
us on, man.
Yeah.
You bet.
It's a blast.
This is a good time. So
Very good.
yeah, make sure if you guys are listening to this to check that stuff out. And then beyond that, make sure you guys are following us on social media. You can listen to the other episodes in our growing archive at the, I believe it's just, we call it the Ask Us Why podcast, but it includes both the Vessels podcast and the 2 Cents. 2 Cents is just me interviewing guys that know way more than me about pretty much everything. It's awesome. I get to learn a lot. And then the other one is me, Connor, Christian, and Allie. And we just babble along, talking about things we think are important right now. But anyways, we hope you guys love this podcast. Make sure to leave a review and like it if you do. Leave us some feedback if you want to. And with that being said, we love you guys and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace out.
Peace.
Hey guys, thank you so much for making it to the end of this podcast episode. If it was somewhat beneficial for you in your walk with Jesus, that means that it could also be for someone else. And so I just want to challenge you real quick to share this podcast with your friends and your family, whether that be via social media, whether it be a text message, or if you're old school, send it by email. Either way, we would love it if you would continue to help us reach more believers, as we are passionate about discipling and growing them so that we together as a community can grow the kingdom. Another great way that you can support us is by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. Both of those, when you leave reviews, it really helps the algorithm and helps push our content to other people. But either way, we love you guys. Thank you so much for being a part of us and on this episode, and we will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out and God bless.